Hello? Anybody home?
Today, I want you to open your mind.
I've almost come to the conclusion that the story is so damning that the mass of people can't deal with it.
We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques to get people actually to love their servitude.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
To change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time.
If you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, then you have a much more easily controllable society than you would if you were relying wholly on clubs and firing squads and concentration camps.
Tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thought.
Starts to form.
The kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men.
Someone born in the United States is not more special than someone born in Mexico. They're just vehicles for the consciousness to experience.
They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much.
It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion.
They reach into our children. Music, television, books.
Prey on children's innocence.
How can I disprove lies that are stamped with an official seal?
So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it feels like an altar to an alien god.
Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc is now in the possession of the Army.
Too many others know what's happening out there, and no government agency has jurisdiction over the truth.
Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. A case to be filed under M for Mankind in the Twilight Zone.
It's about time some of you got acquainted with the real hard truth.
If you don't connect the dots, it's just a mass of what's all this about.
You are listening to the Secret Teachings Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Gable. It is Friday, May 8th, 2026. And we've got UFO UAP files. We've got disclosure from the federal government, the people that supposedly have lied to us for generations after generations after generations, nearly a century. We finally have the truth, or at least that's how the subject is kind of painted. It turns out that the president, and it turns out that the Department of War, it turns out the federal government is instructing us to make up our own mind on the subject of UFOs and UAPs, which is a strange thing for a government to do, especially when that government is and has been for a long time, as far as I can remember back in my experience as a citizen, as a human being. We've always been told never to think for ourselves. We shouldn't think for ourselves about anything, especially more controversial subjects. But now we're being told to think for ourselves. We should think for ourselves about these UFOs and UAPs, which I think, if you've listened to the Secret Teachings before, you'll know this. If you haven't, this might be the first time you're hearing it. I think that is the real conspiracy, because these files show us, and I mean this in all capital letters, nothing that we haven't already heard or seen before, at least for those of us who have paid attention to the subject for any amount of time. You could have looked into this subject by reading a single book on UFOs and UAPs, and you would have been exposed to much of what is in these files. But for people that have never seen these things, they are revelatory. And if we are thinking for ourselves about what we're looking at, which is really nothing, it's a couple of dots, it's a couple of files that allude or imply something A lot of that is based on your own belief, which is the issue. It's based on our own belief. And people want to believe, and so they will believe based on, I guess, an official government acknowledgement, which means nothing because it's not even really a government acknowledgement. It's more of a tip of the hat, a tip of the flying saucer cap to a public who has either been unconcerned and unaware of the subject. That's really the target audience now. Or people that have been obsessing over UFOs for maybe a significant portion of their life. And they'll know, like most of you know, that there's nothing new in these files. But for the people that want to believe, this is proof. This is disclosure. And yet, it's actually not really disclosure. Now, I wonder if anybody has considered this. There's a lot of discussion about how this is a distraction. Of course, everything's a distraction, but there's a lot of discussion about how this is a distraction from something else. Maybe it's Epstein, maybe it's Iran, maybe it's Israel, maybe it's just a poor administration. Whatever the case might be. While people argue that, I wonder if anyone has ever considered the possibility, since these files have been released in the last 24 hours, I wonder if anybody's considered the possibility that when we were looking at the Epstein files, the last thing that the government told us to do was to look at those files and think for ourselves about them. The government told us exactly how to think and exactly how to feel about the Epstein files. They did not tell us, think for yourself and figure it out for yourself. They told us exactly how to think, when to think. And then they told us that those files didn't even exist, even though they were on Pam Bondi's desk, and that it was all a hoax. And are you still talking about that? But with the UFO files, it's kind of like an example I give often on this show. It's kind of like giving a kid in the back seat the little steering wheel. I don't know if parents still do that, but giving the little steering wheel so that the kid pretends like they're driving the car. So this other stuff's a hoax. Don't look into it. Don't possess those files. In the same way that, remember the Clinton files? That was actually illegal to have the files. CNN told us that. It's illegal to have the files. We can't see it. CNN can report on it, but you can't actually have those files. It's totally off limits to the public. But hey, check out these UFO files that show us nothing. I want you to figure out what's in these. And the conspiracy, as I've mentioned on this show many times, I don't mean it as some malicious, sinister conspiracy, but essentially the conspiracy is conspiracy by number. It's giving the kid the little steering wheel in the back seat, letting them think that they're driving the car. Letting you make up your mind will allow the general public and tens of millions of people to come up with tens of millions of different ideas. Everybody has their own kind of Build-A-Bear, their own kind of build a UFO situation going on here, because this can be spun in any way that you imagine. You can make it whatever you want, turn it into anything that you want. And that's exactly what people are doing. Welcome to The Secret Teachings. Again, I'm Ryan Gable. tstradio.info is our website. rdgable@yahoo.com is our email. I'd like to welcome all of you who are tuning into the show on the YouTube stream. Everybody in the chat, thank you for tuning in tonight. Some of you are here before the show even starts. I'm humbled by that. I really appreciate that. For new listeners, I hope that you'll listen to the extent of tonight's show, because we are going to explore these files and more. For those of you in the audio-only version of this show, which is the majority of the audience, note that there is a video presentation tonight. But when you listen in the free archive, which is where most people listen, the advertisements that you hear support the show. And if you're hearing this show without advertisements, it's because you're a subscriber at tstradio.info. And I'd like to thank all of you who have done that, who have subscribed to the show, who keep us on air, If you've not subscribed, please consider doing so. You can also support us via Cash App. rdgable is the tag on there, or on the Buy Me a Coffee. And you can get a copy of one of my books like Occult Arcana, or Liberty Shrugged, or Garden of Hallucinations. And what you'll notice if you've gotten a copy of one of my books is that there's a lot of UFO stuff in my books. I have a section in the occult book on the archetypes of UFOs. I have a very large section in my book, Garden of Hallucinations, about UFOs, UAPs. And I have a very brief mention of that in some of my other books as well. But the main ones, you'll want to get Garden of Hallucinations or Occult Arcana. And in reading these books, you'll realize, wait a minute, somebody published information that the government just released. They published it in a book. How did this Ryan Gable guy publish this information in one of his books? Other people you might know very well who have published things like this before I was ever around in radio. There's a whole bunch of authors and researchers who have published things that the government now has shown us and said, hey, look, think for yourself about this. It might be the first time in history any government has ever told us to do that. But I pulled up one example just to show you. We'll look at this a little bit later. This is a book written by Timothy Good. I don't know what you think about Timothy Good. Maybe you don't know who Timothy Good is. This is one of his books. His most famous is called Above Top Secret. This book is called Need to Know: UFOs, the Military, and Intelligence. And if you scroll through this book, you'll notice something very interesting. Timothy Good compiles a tremendous amount of information in this book. And in scrolling through it here on the screen, you will see that there are declassified documents from the Royal Air Force, from federal agencies in the United States, and he breaks this down based on the time periods. It begins with the 1930s into the 40s to the end of the 40s. And he talks about FooFighters and ghost rockets. And this is not the first place I ever read about something like that. But in reading this again, pulling this file up for the show tonight, I was just reminded of how many people wrote about stuff like this a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And despite the fact that I've had this book and many, many books like this, including Alien Agenda by Jim Marrs, the late Jim Marrs, our good friend, these things are being presented as if they are new. I found files last night. Let me explain to you how it went. I found files last night on these UFOs and UAPs. I had watched a movie, and I went online to, at first, I was going to post my show promo, and then I recalled, oh, I'm doing a live show Friday night, so I don't need to post it. But when I got onto social media, this is what I came across. I came across the Department of War and their war.gov/UFO unidentified anomalous phenomena files, and how they've been released in a historic transparency effort. They fail short of succeeding in whatever effort they were exercising. And I clicked on this and I thought, oh, this is going to have to be the show. Some of you were expecting something else tonight. We'll get to that next week, but I had to change the show tonight because of what the War Department released, and they have a website link. So I clicked on the website link, and it took me to wardepartment.gov, war.gov/UFO for the declassified documents. And I started clicking randomly around, and I came across, well, the same old that I've come across for my entire radio career, which is pretty much just this. It's par for the course. It's nothing new. You can see here on your screen, and if you can't see this, There are links to this on social media or in the show description below once this show is posted. Here is a government document referring to, FooFighters. And this is one of the first documents that comes up in the search. When you click on these files, you can see the files here. There's a list of them. Click on them. And here's one of the first files that's on the list. This file contains SHAEF messages and memorandums related to night phenomena, FooFighters, and flak rockets, and unidentified cylindrical objects, and blinking lights. Oh my God, blinking lights? No, not blinking lights. Those must be motherships. This document includes multiple references to the observations of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron. Just so that you can see what I'm talking about here, this is one of the files. This is one of the documents going back to 1945. Now, I talked about this in my books, and here's a book from 2007, just to give you a little bit of information. There's books that have been written before this, but this one has a lot of documents in it. If you go through this book, you go to the first part, the Second World War, and the book starts by talking about things like FooFighters and ghost rockets, the very same thing that the government is releasing for the first time. Oh my God, look, they confirmed it. I don't know about you, but I remember, and this was my post on social media about this. I wrote this more so for myself. I kind of use X to document my thoughts and prepare shows. But when I saw that, I thought, anybody who has ever watched a Discovery Channel show, anybody who has ever watched a History Channel show, anybody who has ever watched any kind of bizarre documentary or listened to late night radio has heard of FooFighters. Anybody who has ever watched any of these things or listened to any of these things have heard of ghost rockets. Whether they know what they are or not, they've heard of these things. So this is not new information. Now you could say, well, that's just one file. And you'd be right. That's just one file. No big deal. So they released something that we already knew about. Okay, well, there are too many files to say for sure without going through each individual document and reading the thousands of pages that have been released. But reports on FooFighters from the 1940s are also accompanied by balloons. 2-second, 3-second, 4-second clips of what is likely an insect flying past the camera. Photos of dots. And when I say photos of dots, I mean literally photos of dots, like little black dots. It could have been an ink spot or it could have been a mothership. We don't know. Incursions over national laboratories. That one is really interesting because, you know, the incursions over national laboratories, that's something that not only have we discussed on this show for years and years and years and years and years, but if you've ever been to a UFO conference, I doubt many of you have, but if you've been to a UFO conference or if you've ever again watched the Discovery Channel or the History Channel, they tell the same exact stories about UFOs over military installations and over national laboratories. They tell the same stories about nuclear missile silos, whether they're in the US or they're in the UK or they're in the former Soviet Union. It's the same. In fact, on shows like The Secret Teachings, you might have heard people frustrated over the fact that every time there's some kind of new UFO documentary like Dan Farr's Age of Disclosure, they just rehash the exact same verbatim story with the exact same people who, although it's a positive thing, they don't change their story. We've already heard this. It's already been done a million times. Can we get something new? So the government says, here's some files. Think for yourself about them, which is already a very, very suspicious thing. And then they show us what amounts to zero evidence of anything. That includes stuff about Apollo astronauts witnessing unidentified phenomenon. There are influencer accounts on social media. I'm trying to keep this a timeless show, and I'm trying not to refer to some of these accounts because I don't want to promote them. But there are influencer accounts for the White House that are saying, new information about Apollo, they saw UFOs. Do you know how many books I've read on UFOs that mention the Apollo missions? Do you know how many books I've read, whether it's Timothy Good, whether it's Jim Mars, whether it's something kind of random that's self-published at a used bookstore that I found? How many books I've read that have that story in it? I have friends of mine who are book publishers who have written about that. I have written about that. That is not new, and yet influencers for the White House are pushing the idea that this is all new information. Nobody ever knew about Apollo seeing UFOs. Are these people actually serious? Or is there a bigger issue here? Maybe the bigger issue is that is the general public genuinely this unaware of what has been going on? And is the general public naive enough to ignore all the voices like myself and maybe many of you who are pointing out to them that this is not new and that there is no evidence in these files? Believe me, if there was, it would have been put at the very top. There's no evidence in these files of aliens. This is not disclosure. It's not even disclosure really of classified documents, because most of this stuff, again, is stuff we already knew. I mean, maybe you can say technically it's a document that was classified that dealt with something that you already knew about. So technically it's a declassification, a disclosure. But people kind of assumed that disclosure was the government showing us stuff they never shown us before, and it's proof of something that might not be alien per se, but it's proof of something very, very obvious. And that's not what this is. These are literally dots, balloons, or at least reports of balloons. I've seen at least 2 files that say witnesses report bright lights. So what is, I mean, I have a bright light here in my studio. Is that a UFO? I mean, this is real dumb. And it's also, I think this is mostly for people that are aware of these things already. I sent this because it was late night here, very early morning US. And I had sent this to some of my friends, and I assumed they weren't responding back because it was so early in the morning. And I was right. When I woke up here this morning in Japan, it's late night or it's early morning for a lot of this audience. So, or early afternoon, I should say. It's early morning here instead. So it's early afternoon or it's later in the evening for a lot of this audience. And some of my friends messaged me back. And the overwhelming response I got from my friends was maybe 6 words in total from all the people I sent it to. Most of the people I sent this to, people who I thought would care, responded back to me, okay, cool. And these are people that usually I have a larger, text exchange with, but hey, the government released the UFO files. Cool. That's it. I thought people would at least be more interested in, I don't consider what I'm doing tonight debunking anything for the record or being skeptical for the record. I'm looking for evidence, and there's no evidence provided of anything extraterrestrial or interdimensional for that matter here. But I thought people would be maybe a little more excited. But I guess I understand because I'm not really that excited. I mean, really, what we're looking at here would be like if the government said, we're going to release declassified files. And those files you kind of assumed were going to be something that the public's never heard of, that it was some kind of, conspiracy that the government was involved in, etc. And then they just released things that, like, the general public, everybody knows. Like they released files that said, did you know that in the 1940s we dropped 2 atomic bombs, or the equivalent of whatever those explosions were, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? And you'd say, we knew that. There's movies about it. We learned that in school. We knew that. No, this is new information. And you say, okay, that's strange. We already knew that. On that note, did you know that there is going to be a congressional hearing on MK Ultra? Did you know that? Now, if you're like me, you'll know that there were already hearings on this. In fact, I'm pretty sure there were several hearings on this. And do you know who is pushing this, who's kind of behind it? The same woman who's at the forefront of the UFO disclosure narrative. Oh no. Anna Paulina Luna. The same woman who gave us nothing is now telling us, oh, we're going to get those MK Ultra files. We're going to get those MK Ultra documents. Don't believe me? Well, let me show you one of many, many reports about this. And guess what? We're going to get this soon. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna announces House hearing.
We do things the right way.
Of course, there has to be an advertisement. That was the deep state that threw that in there. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna announces House hearing on MK Ultra next month. This was in April. Next month is here now. And there supposedly is going to be a hearing on May 13th. Well, my goodness, isn't that just a few days away? That's within the next week. Now, I'm pretty sure that we had a hearing on this called the church hearings. I'm pretty sure that that was before I was born. Why are we having a new hearing on MK Ultra? I'm not opposed to talking about it. I was told I was crazy on college radio for discussing that, discussing mind control. People called me all kinds of names and made fun of me, which is also weird because that was like 15 years ago. And even 15 years ago, this was very well known that this was a real program and there were several sub-projects of it. But we're now going to get an MK Ultra hearing. What are they going to do? The government ran secret mind control experiments. We got secret documents no one's ever seen before. We know this. None of this is new. We've known this longer than I've been alive. They did this back in the 1970s. So what is going on here? I think that what it is the same thing that we've talked about on this broadcast before, and that is the redefining and the co-opting of a narrative. They did this with Iran. It all began back in 1979 with the revolution. Actually, it might have, if it began at any point, in 1953 it began when we overthrew their democratically elected leader over the nationalization of the oil fields and other issues. And now they want to install the man who they placed in a position of power to replace Mossadegh, the Shah. They want to replace current leadership in Iran with his son. And we're telling everybody this began in 1979, not in 1953. We're doing the same thing with UFOs, and it looks like now with MK Ultra as well, rewriting the narrative. It did not begin in 1979, and the UFO story did not begin in 2017 when the New York Times published that article. It's not true. Obviously, it's not true because these documents go back to the 1940s. So clearly, it's not new. But we're being presented with this information as if it's new or as if, well, the government just, they're going to release this information now. There's something else going on here, clearly. And I think the conspiracy is build a UFO, build your own UFO, like build a bear. Think what you want about it, do what you want, read what you want, research what you do, your own research, pull the videos, share them, and do what you will with the information. When has the government ever told the public to do that about anything? You were told that you shouldn't research anything about the pandemic. You were told that you shouldn't look into the Clinton files. You shouldn't look into the Epstein files. In fact, those are just a hoax. Those don't even exist. But with UFO files, you should look into these. You should make up your mind. Let's go through and let's look at some of these stories. Here is the Associated Press reporting on the release of these files.
Some of the truth is finally out there when it comes to UFOs. The Pentagon today is releasing what it calls never-before-seen files on UFOs after President Trump directed it earlier this year.
Nothing.
The Pentagon
Nothing.
posted on X
Dot.
earlier that Americans can get instant access to the files with no clearance required. Materials will be declassified and released on a rolling basis every few weeks. This comes after former President Obama said aliens were real on a podcast, but also said he's never seen them. He later clarified he also never saw evidence of government contact with it.
Yeah, Obama said they're real, but that's not really what I meant. But I've also never seen evidence, but okay. Wow, that's riveting. Here is something Anna Paulina Luna posted. This is, I believe, if I reload the page, I have all of these pulled up and they're on X. And if you don't click on the page for a while, maybe it's just Safari. If you don't click on the page, you have to reload it. Here's Fox News. What is Fox News is credible. Let's see what they have to say about UFOs.
Fox News alert, the Trump administration releasing the first batch of files related to UFOs and alien life.
So is the truth really out there?
Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy joins us live with the details. What have you learned, Peter?
Good morning. So a White House official left this hard drive on my desk overnight. You can see on it, it says AARO files copy 203. That is the all domain resolution office copy 203. This is the first big batch of UFO disclosure ordered by President Trump. Some of the clips and videos on there have popped up different places before. Some of them have not. And we have been going through this all morning and overnight to try to put together some of the best videos so we can all look at this together. This is a world exclusive right here. So let's go to the first clip over the skies of the United Arab Emirates in June 2024. An inverted teardrop with a vertically linear trailing mass, as described by the War Department, suspended below. The War Department cannot say for sure what this is. It is officially listed as an unresolved UAP report. The next video, over the skies of Iraq, December.
I'm going to pause this because I want to note that the teardrop shape is a universal archetypical shape that people see in both dreams and in the sky. In fact, it's so well known and so well documented that Carl Jung's book on flying saucers, called Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Sky, a book that I have here on my bookshelf, and I'd highly recommend that you read it. Carl Jung literally spends several pages of this book writing about the teardrop UFO, writing about what it signifies, what it means in dreams or in real life. It's in this book. This was published in 1958. This was published 3/4 of a century ago. What the F is Fox News talking about? Some of this stuff's never been seen before. Literally, one of the most famous scholars of all time wrote a book about it back in 1958. But I get it. This is for a largely older audience, which is why they have to play that loud music to wake these people up. And they've got bright lights because the old people are falling asleep. So they put the bright lights on, play the loud music, and then they bring these hacks on who know nothing about UFOs to talk about UFOs. That's what this is.
AP report. The next video, over the skies of Iraq, December 2022. Moving bottom left to top right.
Oh my God, look, a dot. There's a dot on the screen. That's an alien spaceship.
Bottom left to top right of the field of view. All CENTCOM gets from this is an area of contrast. That's what they describe it as. It is officially still listed as an unresolved UAP report.
No, it's a dot. It's still listed as an unresolved report, which means that they've released unresolved reports. It's basically Project Blue Book.
Next video, over the skies of Greece, October 2023. What is described as a small and circular UAP flying near the surface of the ocean towards land. CENTCOM can't tell us what it is. It is officially listed as an unresolved UAP report. Within the last 2 minutes...
You're telling me CENTCOM can't tell us what it is? I thought they released the files.
All of these videos have gone live on war.gov/UFO.
Oh, boy.
White House official tells
Look at that one. You can barely even see that dot.
Fox first. While past administrations sought to discredit or dissuade the American people, President Trump is focused on providing maximum transparency to the public, who can ultimately make up their own minds about the information contained in these files. And there's also a fresh look at some historical records. There's this from Apollo 17 included in this big document dump. One of the astronauts says, we've got a few very bright particles or fragments or something that go drifting by as we maneuver. The control center says, Roger, understood. Another astronaut says, there's a whole bunch of big ones on my window down there, just bright. It looks like the 4th of July out of Ron's window. Another astronaut says, yes, now you can see some of them in shape. They're very jagged, angular fragments that are tumbling. This exchange has long been dismissed as floating insulation.
Look at that UFO. Oh, that's the Earth.
But now the White House is saying, while this photo has been previously released and discussed by keen observers, there is no consensus about the nature of the anomaly. And this all started, of course, because we asked the president about it in February.
Didn't I tell you that there's going to be no evidence provided except some grainy photos and grainy videos and stuff we've already heard? I've been saying that repeatedly since we were first told by Dan Farr on Joe Rogan. I'm sure there's no chance that he was sent to start this narrative on Joe Rogan, and then Laura Trump talked about it, and then there was an executive order, and then they've shown us nothing. But as I've been saying, they show you grainy videos, grainy pictures, even really honestly worse than I thought they were going to show us. Just literally little tiny dots on a camera, little tiny dots in photographs, worse than grainy photographs. There are better photographs that have been taken. And, well, they're not in the files. And what they've shown us is not only nothing, but they've shown us a blank slate by which you can paint this to be whatever you want it to be. And as I said at the beginning of the show, that's really, I think, kind of the conspiracy. It is a blank slate. And hey, Carl Jung, forget about Carl Jung. He wrote this in the 50s, but who gives a damn? Carl Jung talked about this too. It's called the tabula rasa. It is a blank slate by which to paint whatever it is that you desire or choose, or whatever it is that aligns with your perceptions. So if you were looking at these things back in, say, the 1600s, you would only see what was equivalent to the technological development at the time. And those things change over time, from pillars and chariots of fire in the sky, maybe boats, to now spaceships. And now with technology, the way that it is today, and our attempt to peer into the other side with that technology and not with more traditional forms of occult magic, basically it's the same thing. But now we are looking into the other side, the other dimension. And now this is a very theological thing that's happening. They're interdimensional. They're from somewhere else. They're spirits. Which none of that's new, but that's how that's always been a fringe thing. Now it's becoming a mainstream thing. But Carl Jung wrote about that. Again, who gives a damn if he wrote that back in the 50s? You know, this is a stupid book. I mean, the government's telling me the truth. This book is stupid. Carl Jung was an idiot. Trump knows about the UFOs. See, here's 15. Well, here's a 19th century woodcut. Here's a 1561. This is a famous from Nuremberg, the broadsheet, where there's like what are described as cannonballs in the sky. See that? But that doesn't. That doesn't matter. Here's the Basel 1566 one. Dots in the sky. Maybe they are just dots. That's all anybody ever sees is dots. I mean, there is a real phenomenon. There is something there. What it is, we don't know. That's kind of the whole point. And you can weaponize it. And that's exactly what they've done. There is something there. We don't know what it is. That's just what Fox News told us. We have no idea what it is, which means that this information has provided us with no context or perspective. We're left holding the bag, as they say. We're left with the same information we've always had, which is nothing. And so there is something there. We don't know what it is. You are told to make up your own mind. Not to trust the science, but to trust your own mind. When has the government ever told us that? You're told to make up the conclusion. And that should just tell you that something is off here. I wonder if the argument, and it might already be taking place, I wonder if the argument is going to be, well, they're going to release more of these. So don't worry, you're going to get the real ones later. Now, there are going to be more of these released, of course, but I'm wondering if the argument will soon appear in ufological circles, probably already exists. Don't worry, the real ones will come out next time. And by the way, for Apollo UFO sightings, none of that's new either.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
So aliens are real.
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. Well, he made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it.
So the government is trying to answer the question, do aliens exist? And the answer is they don't know, but in an effort of transparency, they are giving us all of the material that they are working with as they try to answer that question.
How exactly are they giving us all the material that they're working with, these files here on the war.gov UFO website? As if they've been working with these files, we've never had access to these. Yet I can pull up this book from 2007. There's lots of them like this. And I can just look at, here's highly confidential Italian government telegram dating back to 1933 from the Director of Special Affairs. This is one of the Italian UFO files. We've had that. Let me scroll through this book. There's hundreds of files in this book. Here's one previously secret memorandum from General George C. Marshall to President Roosevelt, giving details of the Los Angeles air alarm. That would have been the LA battle. And that there's pictures of that, whatever that was, in newspapers. And that photograph in those newspapers is far more credible than anything, and I mean anything, that are in these UFO files. You ever seen the Battle Los Angeles photograph? Look that up. If you scroll through this book, you'll find all kinds of interesting documents. Here's a top secret U.S. War Department message from 1946 relating to 2,000 plus sightings of mysterious ghost rockets and spook bombs, which appeared over Scandinavia, Sweden in particular, and other countries in 1946. This is from the National Archives. It's top secret. It was released, well, not last night. It was released a long time ago. Pause the show, please. Go ahead and you can look at that document. Screenshot it. Go search for it on the internet. They're talking about FooFighters, ghost rockets, spook bombs. In this case, specifically ghost rockets and spook bombs, in July of 1946. 1946. Maybe I am dyslexic a lot of the time, but maybe, just maybe, I do know that 1946 comes before 2026, and by the looks of it, you're being sold something here. You're being sold something, a false bill of goods, a play kit, a toy to play around with and argue and debate about. I think the most unfortunate thing about this from a personal perspective is that my coverage of this will undoubtedly be interpreted by much of the ufological community that despises my guts, will be interpreted as he's a skeptic. He doesn't believe. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this based on faith? Is this a religion? Or is this based on evidence? And hey, if you want evidence, I don't need a drunken man at the Pentagon showing me documents because some patriot LARPer named Anna Paulina Luna, who doesn't understand what a parable is in the books of Enoch, or what a metaphor is in the story of who Enoch was. There were several Enochs. I don't need a patriot LARPer who doesn't understand what a metaphor or a parable is, or a drunk guy who abuses women at the Pentagon to show me things that I can literally go to used bookstores and pick up used books that were written back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, and find documents that have been declassified longer than I've been alive about the very things that are in these government files on the War Department website. And if you don't believe me, again, let's just look at this particular file. Here's ghost rockets. These are described as being cylindrical, right? These are the things that fly across the sky, like with the FooFighters. And if we go back to the government website and we go through and we click on some of these documents, I have links to them on my social media post. Here's the War Department document on FooFighters and ghost rockets. And you can see it right there. Here's FooFighters, cylindrical, unidentified cylindrical objects. Those would be the ghost rockets, one of the terms they used to refer to them as. And yet, it's 1946. Here's a document from 1940. This book was published in 2007. So how is that possible? Here's a top secret U.S. Naval Intelligence report from 1946, also talking about ghost rockets. Here's a secret War Department message. This was back when it was the War Department, before it became the This document is so old that the War Department that we know today was once called the Defense Department, and before that it was called the War Department. This is the original War Department in October of 1946, discussing those ghost rockets and that the British might not have given us all the information that they had on them. Here's a book written in 1964, a sketch of what one of these interactions with one of these UFOs was like. 1964, someone sketched that. And you can just go on and on and on and on and on scrolling through some of these documents, news clippings. Like, this stuff has been done. It's been overdone. It's been saturated. It's been oversaturated, and so on and so forth. And I'm supposed to ignore all this? I mean, just the files on Roswell alone, you know how much of that stuff has been declassified? How much of that stuff you can find and read today before there was ever a UFO release? I mean, here's an FBI message from 1950. Immediate high alert for any data whatsoever concerning flying saucers. You read it. It's right there. This was back in 1950. Looking for info on flying saucers, or the equivalent, the UFO. I mean, it's just report, news article after government document. I'm flabbergasted. I've never really used that word in a show before, but I think flabbergasted is a good word. I'm flabbergasted that the general public is being fed this and are expected to believe that this is all new. None of this is new. None of this is unique. None of this even Fox News, none of this even tells us anything. Are they real? Well, we don't really know. Who knows? We have no idea.
And the answer is they don't know, but in an effort of transparency, they are giving.
They're giving us the files. Well, yeah, but we've already had them, so they're not giving us anything. Here's one of those, for those of you watching, here's one of those mega influencers. This release started after President Trump was directly asked about it back in February. He ordered the transparency, and it's happening. In other words, let's turn UFOs, potentially one of the greatest implied discoveries in the history of civilization, all mankind. Let's turn that into a political thing. Like, yeah, the president, this is a political thing. The president said he was going to do what he was going to do, and he did what he said he was going to do. I mean, that's what the president does. He's a trustworthy guy. I actually hate these influencers from the conservative MAGA party as badly, if not more, than the Democrats. I really do. Like, I despise people like this as bad as I do that Krasenstein guy or that Destiny guy, any of those liberal hack Democrat whack job freaks. I hate these conservative influencers just as much. Here's Eric Burlinson, who I don't know, did he have a secret meeting with evangelical pastors? Did he not have a secret meeting with evangelical pastors? It's like a Tootsie Pop. The world may never know. We have no idea how many licks it takes to get to the bottom of the UFO subject. Here's Eric Burlinson. He goes on Fox News, and he starts talking about how they're going to have to release some of these videos that have not been released yet.
Thanks for being with us here today. You and I, Congressman, I think we've had a very candid conversation together. We have both talked about the fact that I am open and curious about this subject of UAPs. But I do feel like we're at a place where evidence needs to start meeting expectations.
Wait, hold on a second. We're at a place now where evidence needs to start meeting expectations. Isn't that kind of how evidence should always be? Isn't that kind of how a population should, like a rational people should approach subjects like this? Like, your expectations should not be what you want to believe. They should be, well, I expect the truth, and whatever the truth is, in this case, it's that the government doesn't know. And that does have congruency, because that goes back to 1953 and the Robertson Panel report, where they said in 1953, the military and intelligence community, they did not know what this was. They were going to monitor UFO groups in order to make sure that UFO groups did not get to the truth before the government did. And part of that involved running a disinfo campaign to undermine the public's research of the subject so that nobody could get close to what the truth might be. Hopefully, the government could do it before the general public would. That's really the true conspiracy. To disinform, to mislead, to misinform, to manipulate the public to believe something that's not true about this subject, or to not believe that there is a subject to even analyze, so that the government could rush to figure out what it was and could exploit it and utilize it for their own purposes. That's the real conspiracy. And you'll notice in both of these cases, the UFO people don't know, the government doesn't know, nobody knows. We're just in an information battle, an information war over what it might be. And we're there today like we were 50 years ago. We're there today like we were 75 years ago. We're there today like we will be in 50 years. Because these things change with how we perceive reality. They change with technology. Fairies don't abduct us anymore. Now we're abducted by reptilians that eat us and then regenerate us in med beds. It used to be that fairies would abduct us and take us to their underground layers and do experiments in these deep underground military bases. They didn't call them that, of course. They referred to them as the layer of the fairies. Fairyland, the world of the fairies, that's where they used to go and take people. You know, that's where they would have the children that they would steal and replace them with changelings. And that today is also being told by people like Eric Burlinson and others. There's like a ET hybrid program. Yeah, it's basically, I heard it third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th hand. I heard it from a guy who knew 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 a guy's cousin, to quote SpongeBob, who might have known another guy who knew a guy's cousin who bumped into somebody in a bar one time who had another cousin who might have heard someone from somebody else who knew somebody else who had a grandfather who knew somebody. That's basically the UFO chain of information. But if you trace that narrative back, you can find it in the fairy lore. Kidnapping kids, replacing them with fairy children that have really dry skin and strange abilities. They don't like eggs for some reason in the stories.
Seen today. What does this tell us? Does this meet any expectation?
Look, I think that we have to take a step back and recognize the historic nature of this. Every president prior to President Trump has really demurred any kind of questions on this. They've dismissed them. They would not talk about it. People would, if anything, snicker or sneer anytime this kind of subject came up. So the fact that we have a president who is open and willing and trying to be transparent is something to celebrate. That being said, I think that this is a teaser. This is a kind of a, something to open up with. This was the low-hanging fruit kind of videos and content for this administration to release.
Okay.
A lot of this some of this has been out there before. It's
at least he admits that.
It's not been acknowledged, right?
Okay.
So you're looking at
Congressman.
And there you go. It's not been acknowledged. So we just want the government that's lied to us to acknowledge something that's already public information. That's where we are. Let me show you something here. I don't know how credible this is because I don't know what's real and what's not real. But I can say that the very not so famous photo referred to as the Calvine UFO photo is considered one of, I'm not saying you have to believe this or I believe, I'm saying it's considered one of the most credible UFO photos ever taken. And this particular photo that I'm going to show you, for those of you who don't know this story, this particular photo is considered one of the most credible. And I want to show you how clear this image is compared to what the government has released. Have a look at this image. That photo is considered real. It's not my opinion one way or the other, but that photo is considered real. For those of you who don't know what this is a photo taken in 1990 in August. The Calvine UFO photo taken by two hikers in Scotland. And what you can see in the photograph is reportedly a fighter plane escorting this object to a military installation. Now you can say this is totally fake. Okay, maybe it is totally fake. What I'm saying is it's considered one of the most credible UFO photographs ever taken. It is considered one of the most credible pieces of evidence we have of something, quote, otherworldly or something very advanced that humans are responsible for. And look how much more credible that is than anything that we see in these files. In fact, if you go to the War Department and you click on their UFO files, and if you click far enough into the files, I believe there's 17 total pages, you'll get to a section where there's photographs. Here's FBI photos. Let's look at a few of those photographs. Here's one of them. I'll take the comments off so that you can see it more clear. Not that it really matters, but there's the photograph. Now, I don't even know where the UFO is. Is it this little speck here? Is that even an object, or is that like an artifact on the lens? That's that image. Look at that. Compare that to the Calvine UFO photo. And this picture was taken it was a year before I was born, 1990. Okay, maybe that was just one FBI photo. Let's look at another one. Oh, look at that one. It's just another black dot. For the record, I acknowledge that I'm not a radar expert. I'm not a pilot. And I'm pretty sure none of you are radar experts or pilots. So how exactly is the general public supposed to look at this and get anything out of it? Clearly, they want you to look at this and be like, Well, it's a UFO file, so that must mean it's aliens. There's the proof, that black dot. If anything, this just undermines legitimate research. This just undermines all of the work that's been done to bring credibility to this issue, which led to the government finally acknowledging officially that we have black dots that were taken by pilots. I think this file release is actually part of the cover-up. That's what I think. You can say, that's skeptical, Ryan. No, it's actually, I don't think that I know that. It's part of the cover-up. Because the government knows, and maybe not officials of a specific agency or like an individual I can name, but there's somebody in the government and somebody at the defense contractors that know a lot more about this than what's in these files. And Burleson can say, oh, yeah, it's just like a teaser. Why do you need to tease the public? We've been teased for 75 years. Just stick it in. Just show us the evidence. What is this game that they're playing? And why do we have to keep playing it? Why can't we get off this ride? Here's another one. Basically the same one I just showed you. It's just another one of the documents. This one's listed moon. That's not even a photograph. I thought it was a photograph. Here's another one. This is in the US. That one's even smaller than the last one. I mean, what is that, a tick? You ever watch Arrested Development where Tobias accidentally takes a picture of himself naked in the bathtub? And since his father-in-law is under investigation for light treason, is it his father-in-law? Yeah, he's married in the family. His father-in-law is under investigation for light treason. The government takes that photo from the phone and thinks it's some kind of secret information, and they share it through the Pentagon, and it turns out it's just a picture of his testicles. And that's pretty much what this is. In fact, you could literally take a picture of your balls and show that to the public, and it would be more credible than these photographs that they've shown. Nothing. But hey, that's not going to stop the UFO con men, the UFO con women, the channelers, the grifters, the scammers, the frauds from claiming that they're channeling these black dots. It's not going to stop these people from claiming, I got secret information from insiders that told me that these photographs of black dots are motherships, and I can channel those motherships. We're going to discuss that next week because we got a lady who claims that she can channel the motherships, and she's charging money for it. Hey, Tom DeLonge's credible, right? He only ripped off with Louis Elizondo a bunch of people who donated or invested money in his To the Stars Academy for flying saucers, and they never produced anything like Stavati Aerospace or the exotic, I forget what that woman's company was called, the Amy Eskridge and her father running that anti-gravity scam. It was called like the Exotic Propulsion or Exotic Technology Group or Foundation. Turns out that was also a scam. What does Tom DeLonge have to say?
You know, we just had a big drop of a bunch of government documents on unidentified aerial phenomena today. Just wanted to put out my own kind of perspective on this. I think that this is a tremendous thing that's happening, I think, for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, the government is now formally doing stuff. They're formally investigating it, formally reviewing it, formally putting it out.
Just for the record, based on what I showed you in that book, the government has already formally released information on this that is far more credible than anything that has been released in the last 24 hours.
Especially that one of the videos looks like a North Star. I think that's one of the most shocking things I've seen in a long time.
Don't worry, Mr. DeLonge. We're going to get to that.
Like that. But I'm just really excited. I'm really proud. And I think that the net that they are casting right now, they're really getting things done, and the government's taking this seriously. And I'm still very connected to the subject and to a lot of people working on this, and I feel really good about it. I'm really optimistic that this is going to lead to more investigations, to more review. We're never going to get the perfect thing just presented to us on a plate. But this is the process that happens over years, where they keep digging and digging and digging, and they get to the truth of it all. And I don't know. I'm just really, really stoked. I'm really, really proud that the country is leading like this.
Thanks, Tom. He's really proud of black dots on camera. Really, really proud of some little tiny dots. What an embarrassment you are, Tom DeLonge. You are an embarrassment and a disgrace. Here's Lauren Boebert, who's also an embarrassment and a disgrace.
God is the creator of the universe. He's never not going to create. So it's always been something in my mind to say, well, how can only ones? Like, God's not going to stop creating just with us. But the more I look into this, the more I see the Old Testament and what was told to us there of fallen angels and Nephilim. I mean, this is in the Bible. There's nothing that says that fallen angels, that Nephilim just disappeared. And so I believe that this could be an aspect of it. You know, there are things that we have seen that could resemble portals. And, you know, I mean, we serve an infinite God, a God of the universe. And to say that this is the only realm is ignorant. And so what I've seen, I wouldn't, put it as, Marvin the Martian kind of thing. But I do believe that this is more spiritual. And if you really want to go there, demonic. God is the creator.
It's demonic. I assume she's in her car right now because she just got done giving her date a blowjob. She likes to do sexual things in public and then condemn Congress for being really horny. Pretty sure it's the same Lauren Boebert. Anyway, Lauren Boebert says this, and she is repeating the same narrative and talking points that we get from J.D. Vance and all the other whack job Christians who think that this is some kind of demonic invasion. If you actually were to go to the Bible and you were to actually read about what those Nephilim are, you can trace it back to Matest Agrist. You could trace it back to a rabbi named Rabin from the 1200s, who interpreted that verse from Genesis to mean something otherworldly. And much like the verse about blessing those who bless Israel, it's a single verse that gets taken out of context wildly, and a single verse that gets mistranslated wildly, and a single verse that's been used in the same way that the Israeli one has been used to wage endless war and slaughter people. This one has been used to rip people off by using the idea of, oh, these are actually aliens from somewhere else. I'm really sick of it. I'm really tired of it. I kind of just don't care. And I think that there might be, just maybe, there might be some, let's call it truth, in a conspiracy of, the whole point of this might be for people that just believe it to be demonic or whatever they believe it to be. They're already biting the hook. They're already on the hook. They're being reeled in. But for people that have more of an open mind, they're going to look at this and think, there's nothing here. And that will undermine and undercut the facts of the case, where they do exist. And I think if there is a conspiracy, that's part of the conspiracy. I have screenshots of something I want to show you. This is from Ancient Skies, an ancient astronaut magazine / paper. And this is Matist Agrist, going to show my work, writing about paleo contact back in 1994. Go ahead and pause the screen so that you can screenshot this. And you can read about the rabbi and the Nephilim, the fallen ones, the fallen angels. Here's the second page of that. Pause and screenshot that. Genesis, there it is, and the Nephilim appeared. And it's very similar to Enoch, because Enoch, and when I say similar, what I mean is it's similar to Enoch in the sense that Enoch supposedly lived for like 365 years, right? Aren't there 365 days in a year? Thoth supposedly wrote 36,525 books. Isn't that like a slightly more accurate mathematical description of how many days are in a year? 365.25. It sounds like Enoch didn't literally live 365 years. And it seems like Ezekiel, he didn't die because he was taken up to heaven. Well, that's kind of the whole thing with Christianity, right? If you are born again, you have everlasting life. So once you make the deal with God, you live forever. It's obviously a metaphor for recognizing that you are eternal, that you are not physical. Your body dies. You don't actually die. You don't have to be taken by an alien spaceship. Believe me, trust me. I used to buy into all this because that's just what I was told. And then when I started thinking for myself one day, I realized, oh, this is not true. This is not the case. Here's that weird looking star UFO. For those of you who cannot see this, it kind of looks like a symbol of chaos. It kind of looks like, well, here I have one on my, had one on my desk. I dropped it. I have one on my desk. This is from Ingyoji Temple in Himeji, Japan. And it's a universal symbol. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Those are the 8 parts of the year. The solstices, equinoxes, and the midpoints. And look at that. That looks awfully similar to that UFO. Look, there's a UFO in my studio. Look at that. Oh, it's looks awfully similar. Now, why is this photo making the rounds? This video making the rounds? It's because it looks weird. There's a problem, however, with this photo. If you look at it, there's clearly a trail behind it, indicating that there is an identifiable propulsion system, whether this is a flare, a rocket, a plane, whatever it might be. See that? There is very clearly a trail of smoke behind it. It's not a Nephilim. That's stupid. Did the Nephilim fly around in circles with smoke coming out the back that looks like a flare or a rocket out of control? I don't remember that. I remember maybe, descriptions of these things having not the aliens themselves, but the ships, the circles, the wheels, having fire, which is where the ancient alien rocket thing comes from. But you might think that discredits my point. Actually, let me add another little piece of information to it, another perspective. Why is it, and this is maybe the most critical piece of information that anybody could ever give you about ancient aliens. Why is it, think really hard about this, why is it that if ancient aliens, this whole ancient alien demon thing, if this were real, if that's actually what it was, that's what happened. Aliens came down and mated with us. Why were they using the same propulsion systems that we are using? Fire and smoke indicates combustion, right? Rocket fuel. Why were ancient aliens using combustion rocket engines burning fuel? And why, if they could do that to get to another planet, can we not do that with those same systems today? And furthermore, here's another little piece of information. You know those images of, oh, it's an Apollo astronaut in a suit. It looks just like a spacesuit. Again, why would ancient aliens be wearing spacesuits that aren't even modern-looking spacesuits? They're like 1960s spacesuits. Now, unless we're talking about time travel or something here, I don't know why you would take a rocket to another dimension. I feel like time machines don't have rocket engines, but unless we're dealing with some kind of weird time travel thing here, I don't see why ancient, advanced, extraterrestrial, interdimensional aliens would be using rockets and spacesuits from Apollo. Now, you could say, well, maybe it's time travel. And I could sell you that nonsense for clicks. But what it most likely is our perception of these things from a contemporary point of view. That's what it is. That's why the flying saucer is spaceship today, and 500 years ago, it was a pillar in the sky, a boat, or a chariot. That's because our perceptions, and again, Carl Jung wrote a whole book on this in the 50s, but fuck Carl Jung. We don't need that analysis. One of the smartest people who ever lived. Fuck him. I've got people at the Pentagon who have dots on pieces of paper. I trust Pete Hegseth, the drunk woman abuser. This is probably not a flying saucer, folks. And thank God there are some people who are that are rational about this. Here's Stephen Greenstreet explaining exactly what it probably is. And what it probably is a parachute and a flare. And that's what it appears to be. It appears to be clearly a parachute and then some kind of flare or something happening here going around. And why does it look like that? Well, it's probably because that's, you ever squint, you got like a tear in your eye or a little bit of water and you squint. And even if you just don't have like a tear in your eye, look at a light. I have a light here on my desk. I can squint and it kind of looks like a star or a cross. So yeah, it's probably a spaceship from another dimension. That makes more sense because they use parachutes and they have noticeable exhaust, which I don't understand how anybody in their right mind can share this video thinking, oh, it's a revelation, when like the whole narrative around ATIP and Arrow has been, these things don't have noticeable propulsion. So the best evidence you have in this UFO dump is an object that has noticeable propulsion. So it doesn't make any sense at all. It makes no sense. Let's listen to Stephen Greenstreet on Fox News, one of the more rational people in the ufological community. He actually agreed to come on this show at one point, but he was really busy and he said, keep messaging him. I think he follows me on X too, but I haven't reached back out to him, and now he's going to be too busy to do that. Maybe we'll have him on at some point, but Stephen Greenstreet on Fox News.
The Pentagon has released what they call, quote, never before seen files. President Trump ordering the release earlier this year. The Pentagon posting on X that Americans can get instant access to the files, no clearance required. We've got investigative journalist for the New York Post, Stephen Greenstreet, who's been following this closely.
Now, that's the second time we've heard that from news reports. No clearance necessary. It's just another one of those talking points. The government cares.
With the details here, Stephen, it seems as though the White House has been doing like a slow drop and giving USB drives to different outlets with video. Anything here that's earth-shattering?
No, unfortunately not. The anticipation was so huge for this. Everyone thought aliens were going to be revealed, but unfortunately, it's just a bunch of blurry images that aren't very impressive.
And similar to what we've already seen before.
Yes, exactly. In fact, two of the images I've seen before. You're showing the NASA footage there. That's been released for years already and has been shown to possibly be a camera artifact. So a lot of the stuff, again, blurry, possibly balloons, possibly birds, normal objects.
Okay, so what does this say to the people who have been asking the DOD to please release everything? I mean, we've had congressional hearings about this. We're in the supposed age of disclosure. Have we arrived? Is the time here? And is there anything that the American people deserve to see and know that remains classified or top secret?
All it takes is one piece of evidence of extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence, and the conversation is over. But that one piece of evidence has yet to come to light, despite all of these releases, all of these testimonials, and all of these hearings. There is yet to be one piece of evidence. It would change the world, but we're still waiting for it.
The Secretary of State, which is probably the highest-ranking U.S. official, along with the Department of Defense, but Marco Rubio has been very public about having seen classified information that could be revelatory. Stephen, in your reporting, how close are we to seeing that ourselves?
Look, I hate to be the bearer of bad news and be a Debbie Downer, but we're nowhere close to it at all. There is a group of true believers who in their heart of hearts believe there are aliens in a basement somewhere. But despite...
In Ohio, right?
Yeah, in Ohio or Area 51 or someplace like that. But it's been at this point decades and not one piece of evidence has come out. So there's a lot of good stories. They're interesting, but we're still waiting on the evidence.
Can I ask you, are you a believer? Do you believe that there's information we need to see?
I do believe there's information that we need to see and should see. I don't believe that it's extraterrestrial or non-human.
Okay. Well, you've been covering this for some time for the New York Post there, and I know that we'll continue to see more and hear from other people who claim to have seen it and wait to see, like you said, the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I think that would get the American people on board, and who knows, and maybe that could be for the worse here if we ever do find out. But thank you for that update. We appreciate it.
Well, that's kind of the whole point. We kind of wanted evidence and proof. As kind of the whole thing with like disclosing classified documents. You kind of want evidence and proof. Honestly, Mistos Dokos in the chat said this. Honestly, I would not be surprised if that's exactly what it is. This is just a lead up to help Spielberg sell movie tickets. Honestly, that might be what this is. That might just be it. It is a high level Hollywood government conspiracy to sell movie tickets to Disclosure Day. I mean, what a genius Spielberg is to make a movie about like possession and channeling and aliens, and it's way different than E.T. and Phone Home. And then he's going to release it, and he just happened to pick a time period in which, for the first time ever, there's going to be an official acknowledgement of aliens, or not really. What a coincidence. What a genius Spielberg is. He must have a crystal ball. It's probably to sell movie tickets. Wouldn't that be something if we get a declassified document 20 years from now? Remember that UFO dump of UAP classified files back in 2026? Well, turns out a new document from the Pentagon has revealed that that was just a promotional stunt for Disclosure Day. Looks like we'll never know how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. Here is another thing that Stephen Greenstreet posted. Fox News Will Kane interviews Tim Gallaudet, who had previously claimed that his house, this guy is such it's like a Corey Good. Tim is, he's got a haunted house, psychic daughters that talk to spirits like Corey Good and his two fat kids. And I unfortunately contributed to their obesity because I gave Corey Good $5 to watch a documentary that's now free on YouTube. And believes that tiny UFOs live in their bedroom. That's this guy. And Fox News is interviewing the guy that's basically Corey Good Light.
Instead, you believe that aliens are already here, haven't you? Have you not? You believe they're what? Walking amongst us in captivity? What do you mean?
I don't know that much. I do know that there are non-human intelligence is that at a higher order than us that are operating these craft, and we don't really know their intentions right now. But we have proof that they exist, and as you mentioned, we're seeing more proof of that of them possibly residing in our oceans. Just today, I will
say that that's thinking outside the box to some extent. Although USOs are not a new thing, it's at least thinking outside the box to some extent. And not that Tim is the guy that came up with this idea. I'm just saying that for UFO conversations, USOs kind of get left in the water.
With a retired Navy captain submariner who witnessed in 1983 an underwater object that moved at speeds that we can't reproduce, and that he was not able to confirm was an adversary, was an unknown.
But you have said you...
That's the guy who thinks that UFOs live in his house. Totally credible. Absolutely credible. I pulled up two funny videos. I pulled up, this is the old 1979 Atari game, and this is Asteroids, and this is Space Invaders. And I just wanted to show you that if you looked at Asteroids, it actually kind of looked slightly more credible than these photographs that they've shown us on the Pentagon website. Yeah. Oh, look, there's a UFO. There it is. Oh, they got him. And then here is Space Invaders. Definitely more credible. This is secret Pentagon footage from an attempted alien invasion that was thwarted by the powerful U.S. military and their greatest ally. You might as well just release something like this. Just make it a joke. There you go. I like the asteroids sound better. There you go. Yes, for those of you in the chat who have pointed this out, I see... well, it's moving pretty fast now. Let me scroll back up. Gnarly Sheen said it looks like the Indian moon landing. Pretty much. Yeah. Oh, there's the UFO. There's the... Oh, they got him again. Too bad. Well, that's pretty much what you get. By the way, I pulled up the... We'll go to the top here and we'll look at the title. Office of the Director of National Intelligence 2022 Annual Report on UAP. And you'll note in this report that they use the word threat. They say UAP continue to represent a hazard to flight safety and pose a possible adversary collection threat. The use of the word threat is a given because if anything is potentially interfering with commercial airliners, commercial aircraft, or civilian aircraft, or military aircraft, then of course it's a potential threat. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a drone. It could be someone shining a laser in the sky. It could be a mothership. In all of those cases, though, it obviously indicates that there's a threat. Or there could be a threat. They don't know. It's unidentified. There is no alien Project Bluebeam secret conspiracy. That's not real. That doesn't exist. In fact, I'll show you in real time how it's not real. Go to the internet, type in Ernest. I remember how to spell his name. Monast, I think it's, maybe it's Ernest Monast. Type in his name. I spelled that wrong. Canadian journalist, Monast. Sergei Monast. Why did I say Ernest? Sergei Monast. Sergei Monast and Project Bluebeam. Type in Sergei Monast, Project Bluebeam, PDF. You should be able to find it on archive.org. And that is that's a book written about it. Sergei Monast. I had a copy of it. Where is... Okay, unfortunately, I cannot find the original document. I had a copy of it. Sergei Monast, Project Bluebeam. Paper. Let's type that in. I swear to God, stuff gets removed from my search engine. Like, once you find it, stuff gets kicked out. Project Bluebeam. Oh, here's the paper, yeah. I don't know if I trust this particular website, but this is the paper. If you read the paper that Sergei Monast writes, he is inspired by Star Trek and Jurassic Park. And it's not really about aliens. It's more so about Jesus and Muhammad. It's more so about staging the second coming of Christ more than it is about UFOs. And yet people continue to repeat this talking point about Project Bluebeam. But Project Bluebeam is not a real thing. It's just not. Never has been, never will be. I found the link to the archive.org text here. I had to go to my files to find it. Here's the link. I can put it in the chat so you can read it yourself. Go read it. Free. Here's the first part of it. Space Odyssey, Star Trek. It's just like those. Independence Day. Jurassic Park is also mentioned in here. And then if you go down to the description of how this is going to go down, the projections, final part of this, the projections of Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, etc. will merge into one after correct explanations of the mysteries and revelations will have been disclosed. This is all a theory by a sci-fi writer from Canada. That's it. And it doesn't really even have anything to do with aliens. It has to do with Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Krishna, etc. If you read the whole thing, if you go down to the bottom, he's basically repeating every New World Order conspiracy theory that's ever been discussed. So it's not real. Now, Carol Rosen did talk about giving speeches for Mr. von Braun and doing work with Werner von Braun, and that there would be a sort of final card outside of terrorism and asteroids, space-based weapons that we have to build. The idea was not that there would be a fake alien invasion, but that the potential threat of the presence of aliens, or whatever this stuff you want to call it, demons, the potential threat of these things, that's the lie. That's the lie. And that is precisely what this official acknowledgement from the government is. It is a issue of threats. It's the threat. That's it. It is the threat of something from somewhere else. It's not a fake alien invasion. It's none of that. Why do people keep repeating and regurgitating this stuff? Some people get really angry when you say, hey, this isn't real. This is, at the very least, this is taken way out of context. Not real. There is no fake alien invasion. Even if you read the guy's paper, it's like Jesus. That's what it is. It's like Muhammad. Why do people keep pushing this stuff over and over and over again? The fake alien invasion, fake alien invasion, fake. Well, that's precisely what is the purpose, I think, of these UFO files being officially acknowledged and released, is that the public will take something that nobody really has an explanation for, and they will turn it into their own little conspiracy. Whatever they want it to be. They'll turn it into their own little conspiracy. And that, I think, is what, frankly, I think that's what the government wants. They want you to come up with your own little conspiracy so that you can do the footwork of disinforming your fellow Americans. I don't know so much about this website that I'm showing here, but it's got a link to one of the videos. There's some of these that are about 11 minutes long. They're lengthy. This is the one where it's a shorter clip of her actually talking.
Taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now, at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine, that the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there and too late.
That's what she actually said.
Card, and remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie.
Where did she say there was going to be a fake alien invasion? Maybe it was another interview. Where did she say that they were going to use Project Bluebeam? Maybe it was another interview. So that's not what she said, and that's also not what Sergei Monast wrote. Because he wrote about Jesus and Muhammad, and Carol Rosen's talking about building space-based weapons based on the threat of aliens. And that is pretty much the talking point of the DNI and the Pentagon. That's pretty much the talking point of the FBI, the DOJ. That's pretty much the talking point of every government agency that has any connection to this whatsoever. It's just a potential threat, which is an obvious thing. It's obviously a potential threat. By the way, just scrolling through the internet looking for things for tonight's show. And that was Carol Rosen, for those of you who missed it. I just stumbled across Studies in Intelligence, a collection of articles on the theoretical, doctrinal, operational, and historical aspects of intelligence. And this is a CIA document on their website, released in 2002. And, oh, look at that. There's an article in here about the CIA's role in the study of UFOs from 1947 to 1990. So this was released 24 years ago. And this is the CIA talking about UFOs. It's on the CIA website. And 24 years ago. So what am I being sold here exactly? What are we being sold here exactly? Let's go to the government website and let's look at some of these documents, shall we? I'm going to open up a new tab and we are going to scroll through a good handful of these documents, and we're going to take a look at them here on the Secret Teachings. And then you can continue this after the show. Just scroll through, click on these things based on what you know now from the broadcast, and you'll have a pretty good, clear-headed perspective on what you're actually not looking at. And what you're not looking at is evidence of aliens. This is what the War Department posted on X. Today, the Department of War announced the initial release of new, never-before-seen files on unidentified anomalous phenomena as part of the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters. This interagency effort includes the White House, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Energy, the DAO's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Bureau, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and additional components of the U.S. intelligence agencies. The collection will be housed on war.gov/UFO. And additional files will be released by the Department of War on a rolling basis. I find it interesting that they called it /war, excuse me, not war, /UFO, and instead of UAP. Don't you find that strange? Don't you find it strange that they refer to it as UAPs, 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 and then when they make the website, suddenly it's war.gov/UFO? I find that strange in and of itself. But let's go to that website. This is their website. And You scroll down through the website and you'll see their official statements, and you will see the document archive, and you can click on these. Remember, you don't have to have clearance. They want you to know that. You don't have to have clearance. I guess that I assume that means that I'm supposed to think the government cares about me and wants me to know the truth. I've pulled a few of them here that you can see. I showed you one earlier. We'll also click on some random ones here in a moment. Here is the one about FooFighters again. You should be very well versed on that subject by this point of the show. Not new. Here is the one about a balloon. I'm sure there's probably more than one, but this is one I clicked on. I was 4 for 4, 5 for 5, 6 for 6 last night, clicking on them and finding things I already knew. A U.S. military operator reported observing one possible balloon. Not even a balloon for sure, just a possible balloon. Possible. All descriptive and estimative language contained in this report reflects the reporter's subjective interpretation at the time of the event. They released the UFO files, subjective interpretations of what might possibly, maybe, could be, maybe, I don't know, a balloon. What is this? Here's an FBI document. This is a very long one. If you click the download button, it'll take a moment to download, and it is a very lengthy set of documents. So I don't have time to read through all this before doing a show. But the description of this particular document references unidentified flying objects, flying discs documented between 1947 and 1968. The reports, the records that you're looking at here that you can download talk about incidents at places like Oak Ridge, the National Laboratory. We know that Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and numerous other national labs, both those that worked on the Manhattan Project and others, are one of the ground zeros for UFO sightings in contemporary times. In the same way that Idaho, the state of Idaho, has one of the highest per capita UFO sighting records, and they also happen to have what amounts to a relatively secretive national laboratory that developed nuclear reactors dating back to, well, around this same time period. It's called the Idaho National Laboratory. I've been there to the Idaho National Laboratory, and they got a whole bunch of UFOs out there. And I've done numerous shows on that in the past, but they're not. Nobody's talking to me about going to a conference or going on Fox News or briefing the president. Here's a bright light in the sky. That's what this one is. Literally. This one's great. This is an FBI 302 interview conducted with a U.S. citizen regarding their firsthand account of a UAP encounter at a U.S. test site. USPR described a bright light over the horizon. That's it. A bright light over the horizon. I mean, I got a bright light here on my desk. Is that an alien spaceship? Obviously, they never said it was going to be alien disclosure, just disclosure of what we have. And obviously, they've always, a lot of the stuff's already been released. We've already seen most of the stuff, as Stephen Greenstreet said. Here is Apollo. Apollo 12 is the fourth crewed U.S. mission to the moon, and it talks about how they observed unidentified phenomena. I've seen documentaries about this before. That's not new. Here's one I really like. I like the what is probably an insect, and if it's not an insect, I'm sure there's a very reasonable explanation for what this is. Get ready, it's going to happen fast. Oh, there's it. That's it. You know, it's like that old Jerry Seinfeld bit about training for the Olympics, and you train your whole life. And it's, you know, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't have sex, you don't do anything. You train for you go to the Olympics, and these people are so fast, and it's over so fast. It's starting gun, it's done. And you lost by like a fraction of 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 an inch. And the guy's got to be thinking, if I had a pimple, I would have won. That's basically what this UFO disclosure is. We want it, 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 we want it. And the government says, okay, are you ready for the UFO disclosure? All right, there it is. That's it. Can we move on to something else now? There's your UFO disclosure. And what you're not watching, if you're just listening to this, is a video that like 1 second, 2 seconds of an object that just flies across the screen. They also refer to those as rods. They're insects. Looks like it's going really fast. Turns out it's actually not going that fast. But who cares, right? UAP, UFO. Turns out a lot of these things are just insects, or a lot of these things are just artifacts, or a lot of these things are just your imagination. They can be whatever you want them to be. All right, let's take a look at some of these files now. I'll remind you, you're listening to The Secret Teachings. For those of you watching the video, several people tonight have said that the audio has been fine throughout the show, but for some reason the video keeps freezing up. I have a full signal. There's nothing else connected to the internet. I am in Tokyo, so that might be part of the reason. And I also don't have my VPN on tonight because the last time I had it on, it caused some issues, some other issues, so I didn't turn it on tonight. Maybe that's the issue. Obviously, if you're in the audio archive, if you're listening only audio, you haven't recognized or seen that. But if you go back and watch the video, you might notice that. I don't have any control over that. Everything says it's, green on my end. Let's look at some of these files. This is the first page, okay? And you just click on the first one. And this is the first one I clicked on. And it's that same one I just showed you about Oak Ridge and National Laboratories. So I clicked on that and I thought, well, I already knew that. So I'm 1 for 1. Here's number 2. Number 2 is also apparently it's also Oak Ridge. So I thought, okay, maybe I should scroll down some and click on some other ones here. That's also Oak Ridge. So this is like all the same, just different sections of the same reports. So they really, all these files, this is like mostly the same exact report, different parts of the same report. People are scrolling through, oh God, look, there's so many files on this. And it's just basically the same exact report several times. So we go to page 2. Here's a new one. This is from the Department of War. What does this one say? This file contains memorandums and correspondence related to flying disc saucer sightings, and that those are a matter of concern for the Air Material Command. We can download it. It'll take a moment to open because it's very large. It's now open. And you can read this. Subject, flying saucers, Air Material Command. Confirming the recent conversation of the undersigned with Major General L.C. Craigie, December 9, 1947, concerning flying discs. And if you want to go read through this, you can go read through it. There's no pictures. It's just conversations. This is all stuff that was in the book I showed you earlier from 2007. And that's just one book I pulled. There's tons of books on that. I'm actually pretty sure I've seen this document before. This one is to the Deputy Chief of Air Staff for Research and Development. It describes what these discs look like. Actually, I am 99.9% sure that I have a copy of this document, and I've had a coffee. My goodness, maybe I need a quote coffee. I have had a copy of this document when I was homeless. I remember I had like a box of documents in my car when I was homeless, and I'm pretty sure it was this document because I actually printed this document out and I used to hang it up in the studio because I thought it was so cool. And it describes what these objects look like. Surface is metallic, indicating a metallic skin. When a trail is observed, it is lightly colored blue-brown haze, similar to a rocket engine exhaust. And it's ghost rockets. Size estimates place it somewhere near the size of a C-54 Constellation, as they would appear while flying at 10,000 feet. I assume that's 10,000 feet. Some reports describe two tabs located at the rear and symmetrical about the axis of the flight motion. The discs oscillate laterally while flying along, which could be snaking. I'm really sure that I have that same document somewhere. I don't know where it is now. It's scanned in a hard drive. But I'm pretty sure I've got that same document. Let's go back to the revelation of UFO information. Oh, it's so intriguing. And I do mean to be sarcastic, because this is it's just ridiculous. This file contains an independent report on UFOs written by the French association Cometa, a French magazine, VDS, in 1999, which details the results of a study by the Institute of Higher Studies for National Defense. The file also includes a letter from Carol Rosen, in which she notes that she was spokesperson for von Braun during the last years of his life. We can open that document up too. I might save that one separate here. Go back to that later. Here's the document. I don't know if we could search Rosen. No, I think maybe it's because it's handwritten or something, or at least that part was. And maybe you can search these things, but my computer's not letting me search them. I might have to download the file to search it. Anyway, referencing Carol Rosen. I'm sure someone's going to pull this. Look, Carol Rosen's mentioned in the documents. It's a Project Bluebeam conspiracy. They're admitting Bluebeam's real. Well, not really, but that's the fantasy you want to live in. Okay. We can go to another page of this. Click on another random one here. Here's a 2-page memorandum. 1952 relates to increased reports of unidentified flying objects. Included in the record are possible explanations of increased sightings, such as technological improvements, historical records of UFOs, and the U.S. Air Force opinions on UFOs. That's an interesting document, actually, because it describes what is likely an explanation for these things. So, in other words, the great UFO revelation turns out to really just kind of be also a document where the government's describing what these things likely are, the ones that they are able to describe. But it checks out. This is disclosure. Big stuff. Nobody knew any of this before. Let's skip ahead to some of the later pages. Let's go to section 7. Here's the Department of War. This is a document, is a range fowler debrief, a standardized reporting form the U.S. Navy uses to record the circumstances surrounding an unauthorized intrusion into controlled airspace during active military operations or training. How many times have you heard this report? U.S. military operator reported an encounter with a group of 2 UAP. The operator described the UAP as balloon-shaped, metallic, and reflective, characterizing them as 2 times red blinking strobes. The report states that one range fowler was circling around the other, and it goes on from there. Just riveting stuff. I never thought I'd be really bored with UFOs, but this is really boring stuff. Here's another one. Department of the Army submitted a report of an unidentified anomalous phenomenon to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, consisting of 1 minute and 49 seconds of video. Here's a video. It looks like you took a video in your car out the window in the middle of the night, driving without traffic lights. That's what it looks like. Another car coming towards you on the road. I just, maybe the propaganda, I just don't care. I just don't even care about UFOs anymore. Literally, you could probably get a better image if you were to go out on a dark road in the middle of the night and film cars driving toward you. Oh, they've changed the camera now. Looks like, is it gray? Oh boy. That's riveting. Looks like a set of car headlights. Let's go to this photo. Oh, look at that. It's a little tiny black dot. That's from the FBI. You notice that a lot of this is from the Arrow office, which has done nothing but really cover up what the history of this stuff has been by rewriting the narrative to say this is all relatively recent information when it's not. This is a joke. Here's a Apollo 11 technical crew debriefing. The document highlights 3 observations: 1, an object on the way out to the moon; 2, flares of light inside the cabin; and 3, a sighting on the return trip of a bright light, tentatively assumed by the crew to be a laser. That's the Apollo 11 technical crew briefing. We already know those stories. I've watched probably half a dozen documentaries. I probably read 20 books that have mentioned, referenced, or even documented the Apollo 11 story about flashes of light inside of the capsule, about witnessing things on the way to the moon. Here is Apollo 12. What are those? What is that? This archival photograph depicts the lunar surface as viewed from the landing site of Apollo 12. The image features 5 highlighted areas of interest labeled Area 1 through Area 5 above the horizon, in which unidentified phenomena are visible. Yeah, that looks like nothing. Let's skip ahead to one of the last 2 pages here. Here's a State Department cable. Ufologists of Turkmenistan has gained a positive reputation as a reliable partner to the United States in Turkmenistan, to the amusement of the cable's author and the buildup of civil society organizations within the country. The reputation has become earned because everyone in Turkmenistan apparently is interested in UFOs. Somebody interested in UFOs in another country. That's what a record that is. And here's page 17, the final page. FBI interview conducted with a U.S. citizen regarding the first-hand account of a UAP encounter at a U.S. test site. Usper described a bright light over the horizon. That seems to be the same document we looked at earlier, but it's listed twice. Or it's a follow-up or another part of the original. I don't know why they wouldn't put that in the first page, but okay. And this other document that is left here. Orbs launching orbs. This document is a summary of statements by 7 U.S. persons employed by the federal government who separately reported observing several unidentified anomalous phenomena in the western United States over the course of 2 days in 2023. Reports like a translucent kite. Orbs launching other orbs. See, the thing is, I've seen orbs before. I've seen these in Utah. I've seen them in Arizona. I've seen them in Florida near MacDill Air Force Base. I've seen them in Nevada when I've stayed in Rachel 5 times. I've also seen them next to active volcanoes. The thing is, when I see these orbs, they're usually next to military installations or active volcanoes. There's a very good explanation for what these things are. In the one case, I saw them in Utah. There was no military base around, and their appearance had been documented in that area for hundreds and hundreds of years. The place where I saw them was an individual owned this land. They had a campsite on it, and they were native, and they had lived there generations, and they had known about these things. They called them their ancestors. This guy told me that what I didn't say, this is what I saw. I said, do you ever see things out here? And he said, yep, right up there on that butte, we see lights. We've seen them for generations. What do you think they are? He said, we think that they're our ancestors. There is something real about all of this stuff. But what the government has shown you is nothing. Nothing we didn't already know, nothing we didn't already have access to or proof or evidence of. I mean, technically some documents we didn't have, but they don't really show us anything. This is build a UFO. You can build it to be whatever you want it to be. You're not supposed to ask questions about pandemics or Epstein or Hillary Clinton, but you're allowed to ask a lot of questions about these UFOs. It's a blank slate for you to paint on it whatever you want to paint on it. They're rewriting history, rewriting the narratives, and we just think it's a big game. And hey, I guess I guess it is a big game. It's a supersized UFO, UAP, nothing burger. Brought to you by Patriot LARPers, Fox News hosts that are trying to be relevant, UFO grifters, hacks, con artists, fake channelers, spirit, warrior light princesses on the internet and Instagram, drunk guys at the Pentagon, a president who's confused why the population's sick while he's eating McDonald's and saying we're going to get to the bottom of why everybody's sick. Brought to you by all of that. And if anybody dares to step outside the boundaries of contemporary ufology, they are considered to be a skeptic. They are considered to be someone who just doesn't believe. I don't know why. It's a matter of belief. That's a faith. That's like a religion. Here, let me show you before we conclude the show tonight. You can find this on the Black Vault, but there's other sources too. The report of meetings of Scientific Advisory Panel on Unidentified Flying Objects convened by Office of Scientific Intelligence, CIA, 1953. Type in Disney, and you'll find this. The teaching techniques used by this agency for aircraft identification during the past war was cited as an example of a similar education task. The Jim Handy Company, which made World War II training films, was also suggested, as well as Walt Disney animated cartoons. Dr. Ninek suggested that the amateur astronomers in the U.S. might be a potential source of enthusiastic talent to, quote, spread the gospel. It was believed that business clubs, high schools, colleges, and television stations would all be pleased to cooperate in the showing of documentary-type motion pictures if prepared in an interesting manner. The use of true cases showing first the mystery and then the explanation would be forceful. In other words, show people things that are unexplainable. Let them think whatever they want to think about them. President says, make up your own mind. And then later they'll probably figure out, oh, we actually identified what those things were. And yeah, that's not aliens. Ladies and gentlemen, if anything is happening, okay, if there's any conspiracy, it's that the policies of the CIA from the 1950s are still very much in play. That's what it shows us. It's business as usual. Nothing's changed. Here's probably one of the best parts of the whole document. The panel took, what is that word? If I zoom in, cognizance. Looks like the G was almost erased. The panel took cognizance of the existence of such groups as the Civilian Flying Saucer Investigators and the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. These are UFO groups. It was believed that such organizations should be watched because of their potentially great influence on mass thinking if widespread sightings should occur. The apparent irresponsibility and the possible use of such groups for subversive purposes should be kept in mind. There is something there. The government knows it. They just don't know what it is either. And they had to watch these groups and send people like Richard Doty out in order to figure how those people were researching, if they had figured something out the government didn't know, and then how to mislead them if those things were the case. And they did that with Paul Benowitz, drove him crazy, and, well, he's the victim of the UFO disinfo campaign. That is the Robertson Panel Report. Thank you for listening to tonight's show, the supersized UAP, UFO, UAP, Nothing Burger. Business as UFO-usual. Nothing ever changes. It just stays the same. Or as much as things change, the more they stay the same. tstradio.info, rdgable@yahoo.com. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Please buy me a coffee, support us via Cash App, subscribe to the ad-free archive. If you're on video watching this, you're on YouTube, X, Facebook, this is not our main show file. You'll have to go to the secretteachings.info or tstradio.info, get access to the full archive, all of our audio shows. If there's any technical video issues with the stream, the audio file is crystal clear, perfect broadcast audio. Here with my Shure SM7B and my Rodecaster board. And 16 years of radio experience, including 16 years of UFO experience. And that's what you actually get out of this UFO release. So don't let anybody mislead you or try to manipulate you with what these documents say or don't say. Again, tstradio.info, rdgable@yahoo.com is the email. Please support the show. Please help keep us on air Monday through Friday. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to thank all of you who are new listeners for tuning in and sticking with us, as much as I'd like to thank all of the older listeners. Have a fantastic night. And as always, I will talk to you on the next broadcast. The music tonight, White Bat Audio. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.